One spring afternoon, a man we'll call Marcus sat in his car outside a bank branch, staring at a notification on his phone. A $17.50 fee, just for the privilege of having his account open. He wasn't rich, not yet, but he'd crossed a line a few months earlier without realizing it, and that fee was about to become the first clue. There's no ceremony when your net worth crosses certain thresholds. No email, no confetti. But somewhere out there, computers and humans alike quietly resort you into a different category. And the moment they do, everything from your mailbox to your dinner conversation starts to shift. This is a story of three numbers: $100,000, 1 million, 5 million. And what happens to the person standing on the other side of each one? Let's start with Marcus and that $17.50 fee. The six-figure threshold. Marcus walked into the branch ready to argue. Instead, the banker glanced at his account, tapped a few keys, and said something he didn't expect. "I can waive this for you today. Come back in a couple of months, and I'll probably be able to waive it every time." Marcus didn't understand it in the moment, but he'd quietly crossed six figures in combined savings and investments a few weeks earlier. Nothing else about him had changed. That number alone had rewritten how the bank saw him. This is where it always starts. Somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000, you stop being a name in a database and start being a client. And every major bank has a tier system built specifically to notice the difference. Fees get waived. Phone menus get replaced by an actual human. Lending terms soften. The waiver itself was worth maybe $20 a month. Almost nothing. The message underneath it wasn't about the money. It was the bank quietly saying, "We'd rather keep you than nickel and dime you." A few weeks later, a second clue showed up in his actual mailbox. A pre-approved offer for a premium travel card, the kind with lounge access and elevated cashback, the kind he'd never bothered applying for. He hadn't asked for it. It had gone looking for him. Of the loan compared to a year earlier, just for looking, on paper, like a safer bet. Then a financial advisor actually returned his call. Someone who, 6 months earlier, would have redirected him to an automated line. He'd later learn he was probably one of the smaller accounts in that advisor's book. The attention was real, if thin. Still, a door had opened that used to be shut. And then the strangest shift happened with his own friends. He noticed he'd stopped flinching at the bill split. Without trying, he'd become the friend people started asking for advice. One old friend went quiet whenever money came up. Another leaned in closer than ever. Nobody around Marcus knew his balance, but somehow everyone could feel that something had shifted. He had no idea this was only the first of three thresholds. The $1 million door. 7 years later, Marcus crossed a very different line. $1 million in investable assets, built through a career, a home that had appreciated, and a habit of not touching his investments when the market got scary. This time, the shift wasn't subtle. His bank called him for once to let him know he now qualified for their private client program. A dedicated relationship manager, a wealth strategist, invitations to events that never showed up on any public calendar. Was it life-changing? He wasn't entirely sure. The relationship manager was pleasant and attentive, but honestly not someone he needed day to day. The upgrade was real. Whether it mattered was a different question, a feeling common enough at this level that it's practically a cliche among people who reach it. The car story changed shape too. When his SUV needed replacing, the conversation for the first time wasn't about approval odds. It was about whether he wanted to just pay cash. At the luxury dealership he walked into out of curiosity, nobody rushed him. The pressure that used to define car shopping had simply evaporated. Financial advisors flipped from something he had to chase to something that chased him. LinkedIn messages, portfolio review invitations that were really soft pitches, a golf outing he didn't remember agreeing to. The standard 1% fee, which had felt steep at $100,000, suddenly made sense attached to actual estate planning and a CPA who now knew him by name. But it was his personal life where the $1 million mark hit hardest. A cousin asked, half joking, whether he could help cover a wedding. A friend mentioned, a little too casually, that he must not worry about money anymore. Marcus didn't feel different, but he was clearly being treated as though he was quietly nominated as the emergency fund of his own social circle. Not everyone changed towards him. Most people stayed exactly the same. But money wasn't just opening doors for him anymore. It was sorting the people already in his life into categories he'd never asked it to create. There was one more line ahead, and this one would flip the entire relationship on its head. The $5 million flip. Marcus never set out to cross 5 million. It happened slowly, then suddenly, after a business he'd invested in early finally had its exit. And this time he stopped having to look for anything at all. His bank stopped being a bank. The private wealth division functioned more like a concierge for an entire life, coordinating private aviation for a family trip, connecting him with a specialist for a small art collection he'd started almost by accident. He noticed with some amusement it was the same staircase he'd been climbing since that $17.50 fee, just fancier names at each step. Private client, private banking, private wealth. Barely different words, completely different levels of hand-holding behind them. His financial conversations stopped being about index funds and became about architecture, trusts, tax structures, plans built to outlive him by generations. He crossed, almost without noticing the paperwork, into what regulators call a qualified purchaser, legally cleared to access private equity, venture deals, and pre-IPO opportunities off limits to almost everyone he had grown up around. A property he loved found him, through a broker who mentioned it before it ever touched a public listing. Restaurant reservations that once needed weeks of notice opened up same day. None of it felt like luck. It felt like a machine he hadn't known existed had quietly started running, in the background of his life. But there was a cost tucked inside it. Friends began pitching him business ideas over dinner, mentioning check sizes like casual conversation. Acquaintances asked for introductions to people in his world. He got invited onto a charity board he suspected wanted his checkbook more than his opinions. For the first time, Marcus found himself asking a question most people never have to. Is this person here for me, or for what I have? It's the same question behind every reality show built around wealth and betrayal, every gold digger prank video that racks up millions of views because almost everyone somewhere in the back of their mind recognized that particular discomfort. Money had opened more doors for him at this level than at any point before, but it had also handed him a filter he now had to run every relationship through. Not a tragedy, just the fine print nobody reads before signing up for wealth. Marcus's story isn't really about Marcus, it's about 3 numbers and the invisible scoreboard they quietly plug you into. One you never see, but everyone around you somehow responds to anyway. 6 figures bought him a little dignity. 7 bought him a relationship manager. 8 bought him a life where opportunity did the chasing instead of the other way around. None of those numbers changed who he was on the inside, but they changed almost immediately how fast people returned his calls. So if you cross one of these lines tomorrow, would the shift be in how people treat you, or in who you'd let close enough to matter? That's a longer conversation and maybe the subject of the next video. Until then, I'll see you there.